Welcome back everybody, my name is Dustin. In the last episode, we added the ability to load a tile map created in the tiled map editor in our game using Lua. In this video, we're actually going to start changing how we are doing our rendering a little bit. I realized that as we are now, we do not draw any primitives like rects, lines, circles. So in this video, we're going to start to create a new renderer class to allow us to do different shapes and lines. These will probably only be needed for debugging purposes because in reality, you could just use a sprite and a texture to draw what you need. However, let's start adding the ability to draw these shapes. So the first thing we're going to want to do is actually create a new class called the batcher class. Because if you look at our batch renderer, we're going to be able to utilize a lot of stuff from this and bring that over into the new batcher class. Okay, so let's start that now. So we'll go into our core and we'll just add in a new header and we'll call this batcher. Batcher.h. So what are some of the things from the batch renderer that we're going to need? First thing, let's grab this here, just so we have the namespace. Cool. Okay. And what are some things from the batch renderer that we can need? Let's actually open up both the CPP as well. Let's take this here, all of this. We'll actually just cut that right out, and we'll paste it right here into our batcher class. So if we go into our batch renderer, what does it have? It has a batch. And then it has the type of glyph or whatever it is creating. So in this particular situation, we're creating a sprite. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take these out here, remove those totally, and create a new file in our essentials. And we'll come here and we'll go new item. And it'll say batch types.h. Okay. So in here, and then we're going to say namespace. Scion rendering, and we're just going to paste these in here. And we're going to need to include our vertex. So include vertex. Cool. And we're going to change this to sprite glyph. Cool. Now we have these in here. And if we go back to our batch renderer, these are all going to be aired out for now. We'll leave this and we'll slowly be moving things over into our batcher. Okay, so our batcher is going to be a template class, and it's going to take in a T batch and T glyph. So that will change based on the type of batch and type of glyph that we're going to be creating. So we go template, type name, T batch. Let's do it like this. And type name, T glyph. Because eventually we're going to be using the batch renderers for fonts, rects, lines, circles, sprites. So all these things are going to they're going to have their own way of doing things slightly. So we're going to need to have a way to change it. Okay. So we'll go class and we'll call this the batcher. Cool. And we're going to have some private. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the batch renderer here and we're actually going to take all of this stuff here. We want all of these privates. We're going to take that out, get rid of this. All right. Now, if we're going to have errors, then we're going to have to fix those, but we'll get around to that. And we're going to paste that in. Now, the VAO, VBO, and the IBO will all be based on the batcher. The batcher is going to be the parent class. And we're going to have some protected stuff. So we'll say protected. We're going to need protected functions because the batcher is going to be the inherited parent class. So we need these, and we're going to just change these to glyphs. Because that could change, and the batch is going to stay the same. But this is going to be a T batch now, and this is going to be T glyph. Cool. So if you come here to our batch render.cpp, down here we have where we're creating in our initialize, wherever it is. Hold on. Right here. Oh wait, sorry. Right here, where we're creating our indices and setting them. Well, not every batcher or batch render is going to need to use indices like lines. We're going to be using draw arrays. So we're not going to need this one. So we're going to actually in here have another little bool, and we'll just say mb use IBO. So use IBO. Okay. And we're also going to have some protected functions as well. So protected, and these will be the functions. So these are our variables that are protected. The other ones we'll leave private because we don't want them to be able to set them inside of their the child class. We will want them to get them, but we won't want to set them, okay? So the first function that we're going to need is the set vertex attribute. So we'll go void set vertex attribute. Okay, and we'll just do that for a second. Let's go back to the batch render. In here, the batch render.cpp, these are our vertex attributes, and we're going to need a way to set these. Now, they're not going to be the same for each batch render, so we're going to need a way to set them. And this is going to be a protected function, and this will be called in the initialize of the batch itself, the new batch renderer that we're creating. So set vertex attributes, that's going to take a GLUint, and that's going to be the layout position. Then it's going to take a GLUint, and that's going to be num components. GLEnum, and that's the type. Then we're going to have GL size IPTR. That is going to be our stride. And then we're going to have our offset. Go down to a new line for this. And that's just going to be a void pointer. Void pointer, offset. And then for the last one is GL boolean. And that's going to be for if we need to transpose it or not, or normalize. So we'll say normalized, and it's going to default to false, GL false. Okay, cool. So the VBO, the IBO, and the VAO will not need to be set outside of the parent class. However, we will need to be able to get them. So we'll just say inline GLUint get VBO, not VBO. And that's just const return VBO. IBO. We don't really need to get the VAO. We want to be able to enable it and disable it. So we'll say inline void enable VAO. And that is just GL bind vertex array M VAO. And the other one will be GL bind vertex array 0. So this will be disable. Now we have one more that is a protected function. We're still going to need to be able to create the batches. So if we go up here, so we have this generate batches. We're still going to need to be able to do that. However, they may be a little bit different for each batch render. So we need a way to override these. So in our batcher, we're actually just going to make that into a pure function. So we'll say virtual void generate batches, and that's equal to 0. Cool. Then we'll say public. Let's start adding in our constructors. We'll have a regular or a default, and the default's just going to call this one here. So batcher and bool and just b use IBO, and then our destructor. Batcher. And we're also going to have the begin function. If we come back here, we have begin and end and render, and that's what we need. Okay. So batcher void begin. The end and the render are both going to be virtual functions as well. We're going to need to be able to generate batches, and we also sort them in the end function if necessary, but we may not have to do that. So we'll have this as another function. Virtual void end equals 0. And the render, same for the render. We may not utilize textures or the draw elements function like we are now. For instance, the lines, when we go to draw lines, we'll be using arrays and GL lines. So we'll change that to virtual void render is equal to 0. Cool. All right. So let's start doing all these functions here. Create. Should create them all in line, and it did. Cool. All right, so let's include a few things in here. We're going to need our vertex, so essentials, and it'll just be the vertex. And then we'll also include vector, memory. Okay. I must have spelled that wrong. There we go. So we got to go up here and change our definition, or declaration, sorry. Geo boolean. Cool. So the set vertex attribute is going to be pretty straightforward. So first thing I want to do is bind the vertex array. Bind vertex array. That's just MVAO. Cool. And then we're going to want to go GL vertex array attrib pointer. And it's going to take in the layout position. Then it's going to take the number of components. Then it's going to take the type. Then it's actually going to take if it's normalized or not. Normalized. And then the stride and the offset. Cool. Now the only reason, this should be attrib. The only reason why I put the normalized at the end here is because I want it to be able to default, and if you have to have a default value, you have to put it at the end. Okay, so then we have to enable it. GL enable vertex attrib array. And to enable it, we need to take in the layout position. Layout position. This should just be vertex attrib. We can get rid of this array. Cool. Oh, that's another reason why it's unhappy. I'm putting it in the wrong place. Sorry, guys. You guys probably already caught that. Okay, and GL bind vertex array 0. Cool. Now that is our set attribute function. Pretty straightforward. Normalized must be spelled incorrectly. Normal, that's why maleized. Go back up, change this right here. Cool. All right. And generate batches should actually be we don't need this one. That should actually be pure. Let's go back to generate. Yeah, generate batches is pure. I don't know why I created that. Interesting. Let me say that again. Yeah, it shouldn't even have created this. Cool. So in our default constructor, it's pretty straightforward. We're actually just going to be calling the other one batcher, and it will default to true. So we want it to create the indices in the IBO by default, and if not, it'll just skip that. We'll do that in the initialize function. I'll show you that in a second. So MVAO. And B use IBO. And that'll just be B use IBO. Cool. And we're going to call the initialize function in here. Initialize. Did I not create an initialize function? I did not. And the initialize will actually be a private function. So we go private void initialize. Cool. Because we don't need this to be accessed outside of the class itself. Only the parent will need it. So we'll put that in there. So for initialize. So if we go back to the batch render.cpp in this initialize function, we can basically grab all of this here and cut it out and go into our batcher and paste it into this initialize. Cool. We have all this here, but we don't need any of this. Any of this here can be all taken away. Cool. However, what I'm going to want to do is check to see if we're using the IBO. So if not, MB use IBO. We're just going to unbind the vertex array. And then return. There's no need to create the indices here. And if not, it'll create all of this for us. Cool. All right, what's next on the list? The next is, so this is done. That's all that we need in the constructor here. And with the destructor, did we do the destructor in here? We probably did. Yeah, so we basically just want to take all this. None of this needs to be done in our batch renderers anymore. It's all going to be done in our batcher. The parent class will do all that work. And the begin function, all it did before was clear the stuff out. So if we go here, basically that's all it's doing is clearing that out. So we'll go back in to the batcher, and in our begin function, add that in, but there is no sprites anymore. These are M glyphs. Cool. And the batches will clear, and the glyphs will clear. Cool, and that is it. That's all we need to start this going. And now we need to go into our batch render and start making these changes. Okay. So in our batch renderer, we're still going to need an initialize function. It's just going to be different. But we're going to have to, we can get rid of all this. And we can include our new batcher. And we need our batch types as well. So include our, that's in the essentials. And that's batch type. Cool. I believe that's all we need. And we want to inherit now from the batcher, from the public. And it's going to be batcher. And we're going to need, so we want the batch and we want the sprite. Does that make sense? So it doesn't have a sprite because we changed it. I forgot to sprite glyph. Cool. So now we're inheriting from the batcher. We can get rid of generate batches. We don't need that. This can be just default. Batch render constructor could stay. Begin we don't need. End we do need, but this needs to be virtual. And we need to override. Now that's optional. You don't have to put that in there, but we're going to put it in. Same with this. Virtual void render override. Cool. Okay. Actually, we did need generate batch. And because this is a sprite glyph, I'm actually going to change this to sprite batch render. Cool. And make all these changes. Yeah, I know it's a lot. We're killing it right now. And that's the whole point. And then here we want to go virtual void generate batches. And that's an override. Cool. And add sprite. Good. Generate batches. Saying it's not. Function definition. Did we not do that in batcher? Generate batches. That's why. Spelling mistakes you guys probably already caught. Okay. So now let's go into our batch render and make all these changes that are needed. So let's go here and go Control H, and we want sprite batch render. Cool. So all those would be changed. Okay, except for this, we want to keep that batch render unless we change the file name. Okay. So the generate batches will be basically the same, except there are no more M sprites. So we need to be able to get rid of that. Right here, did I not get rid of those? We did. So in the initialize, all of this can change. We don't need the begin anymore or the destructor. Okay. We don't need any of this here. That can all go. But we do need the batcher. And we're going to say true. Even though default is true, we're going to put it in. We do want to call our initialize function here. Our end can be basically the same. All I want to do is change M sprites to M glyphs. Or no, M batches. Wait. M sprites. Yeah, M sprites. We can go to M glyphs. So if we have no glyphs, there's no need to try. Change this from M sprites to M glyphs and generate badges. Cool. This one can stay there. And so for our render, we want to change this a little bit. This is just enable, VAO, and disable. That can stay like that, but we'll just say disabled. Cool. Add sprite needs to change. This needs to be make shared sprite glyph. New sprite glyph. Cool. And there is no M sprites. And let's scroll up here. All this can stay the same except for M sprites. I'm surprised that doesn't have an error. M glyph. M glyphs. Cool. And this needs to be get VBO. And I think we're done. Oh, nope, we're not. So in initialize, now we need to set our vertex attributes. Okay. So the first one is the position. So we'll say set vertex attribute, and the layout position is 0. And then it's going to be the number of components for position is 2. GL float for the type. And then we're going to have the stride. And our stride was just size of vertex. Then our offset is just void pointer offset of vertex and position. And this can just stay like that. And I believe our second one was color. So set vertex attribute, and it's position 1, and color is 4. This is GL unsigned byte. Size of vertex. Void pointer. Offset of vertex color. And this one is normalized, so we need to say GL true. All right, and one more. Set vertex attribute, and this is 2, and 2. This is GL float. Size of vertex. Void pointer. Offset of vertex, and that's the UVs. All right, and that's it. That should work. Now, I think I set these up in the right order. Let's take a little look. We can do that by checking our layout positions in our shader. So go to the assets, shaders, basic.vert. And no, so my UVs or my text cores are actually in location 1 and our colors in location 2. So if we go back, we can just make that change really quick. Good thing I checked that. So let's go back to our batch renderer here. Let's just switch the positions of these two here. And just switch the layout numbers. That's all we're going to have to do. So this is 1, 2. Cool. And that should be it. Now, I'm going to try to build this, and it will fail because we changed the name. But other than that, it should work. So let's go build and fix any of the errors that we have. Okay. Check our errors. Of course, it didn't fill my error list. VBO, undeclared identifier. This here. Cool. Okay, because this makes sense because there is no more batch renderer. This is actually a sprite. Batch renderer. Awesome. And we'll run this again. Because we didn't change the file name, it should work there. Cool. VBO undeclared. Get VBO. Yeah, these are M underscore VBO. Cool. Run again. So we got some fails, and that's fine. We'll fix this as we go. Were we successful? No. Yeah, all these things here, they're looking for the batch renderer, which doesn't exist anymore. So let's just try to clean our solution, see if that helps, and then do a rebuild. Batch renderer undeclared, which is correct. That's in our render system. So this should be sprite batch renderer. That should fix that issue. Cool, 2 failed, and I think that should fix that issue. Run it one more time. Awesome. So see, it's still rendering everything that we needed, and that's been changed. Okay, so that's actually it for this video. It took a bit longer to get that to work that I wanted to, but now we're actually inheriting from our batcher class, and a lot of the other functionality has been removed from this and put into the batcher. This will help so we don't have to redo all this code every time we make a different batch renderer. Like, so when we do for circles or for lines, we can just use the batcher now, and that can control a lot of this stuff for us. Oh, okay. So in the next video, we're actually going to get into creating the renderer itself. And the renderer will have separate draw calls. The renderer draw calls will usually be for debugging purposes. However, you can use them if you need. So for drawing shapes and stuff like that, drawing our collision system, if we go like this and we run this right now, as you can see, it shows that we have colliders here. However, this is actually just a sprite image that we used in tiled that to make this look red. We're not going to want to do this every time. We actually just want to, for something like this where we were like, hey, show the colliders, we want to be able to just to create the Rex ourselves. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next couple episodes. We're going to be working to create the renderer and then create something that will draw the collisions for us. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next few videos. Okay, so that's it for this one. If you have any questions, concerns, then leave the comments below and I'll make sure to get back to you. And if not, see you in the next video. Take it easy.